I'm Adam Moz, and this is Moz Models. Today, we are going to take a look at a new product from FrSKy called the FAS7A Lite. This is an interesting little product. It is a FAS, so this is a FrSKy amp sensor, or a current sensor. And this is a 7 amp version, and it's the first one I've seen from them that is a light series sensor. And we'll go over exactly what all of that means in this video. So what you see here is the package that it comes in, and it's a standard anti-static bag. Let me pop that open, and we'll see what we get in there. So we've got a little card, and then we have a couple other things here. So this comes first off with this little card, and it's got basic specs on the sensor. So it's a FAS7 Lite current ADV. This is an ADV series sensor, and it's a current sensor. It's 20 by 13.6 millimeters. 20 by 13 by 6.1, so that's 6.1 thick. The weight of it is 1.9 grams. It supports up to 7 amps, and it consumes 11 milliamps itself. On the other side, you have QR codes, one for the English manual and one for the Chinese manual. Now, you also get a header, the sensor itself, and some heat shrink. And I'm just going to take a quick look at this. Yeah. One thing to be careful of is this sensor does have a defined in and out end. This is the in end here, and that is the out here. Now that actually does matter because we are going to wire it in to a servo header, and we have to be careful because there's two directions you can wire this, and both of them are useful. Now, if you wire the in section with the plug end of the servo header, that will be useful if you want to measure the current a servo is drawing. So a 7 amp current sensor, it sounds kind of useless, but it's not. It's actually really useful, but not for applications where you're measuring motor current. Now this will work for something like an ultra micro, where you're only pulling 5 or 6 amps. This can be an alternative to a telemetry ESC, but for most users it's going to be more valuable when you're evaluating your current draw, either of a servo or a a retract sensor or something else that you've got plugged into the receiver, or for monitoring consumption of your receiver packs when you don't have something like a RB in the mix that will monitor your current consumption. You can have, for example, I've got an R10 here, and this will give you independent voltage, but it doesn't give you current consumption on either of those. So the FAS7 is useful. I wouldn't put it on a high draw setup like the R10, where you can actually put XT30s, which will handle up to 30 amps. That's probably a little too much. For the FAS7, you can throw something like a FAS40 in there instead in the mix if you really want to monitor that. But at that point, you're probably just going to want to go to an RB35 or an RB25. But if you've got a, say, this 2100 milliamp hour Lifey 2S receiver pack, which is, this one's going in my Killer Chaos. For this, you can very, very definitely monitor this with the FAS7 Lite. You're not going to really pull over 7 amps. These connectors are only rated for 8 amps burst, by the way. They're 5 amps continuous, 8 amps burst. So if you're drawing anything more than 5 amps continuous, this is not the way to power your receiver. But for this, I'm actually going to wire this one up to support monitoring a Lifey pack. so that I can actually put it in, say, my Killer Chaos or my 4-star 40 or one of the other aircraft I've got running on the 2S Lifeys, and I'll be able to get consumption because the voltage curve on Lifey is very, very flat. So there's very little difference in the voltage from 70-80% capacity down to 20 or 30% capacity. It drops rapidly from 7.2 volts down to around 6.6 volts, and then stays in that 6.6, 6.5 volt range until suddenly you drop it off a cliff. So voltage is a difficult way to monitor. Now, there's two real ways you can monitor this. One is you count consumption per flight, and then you calculate how many reasonable flights you get based on that data. The other one is persistent Coulomb counting, where you count through the whole capacity of the battery, and in this case this is 2100, so I'd set an alarm to go off somewhere around 1800 milliamps consumed. That's what 1800 is the point I use with 3S 2200s, so it's 1800 is fine for receiver pack. And then I don't have to worry about monitoring the voltage. I just monitor the Coulomb or the milliamp hours consumed. And now, to be clear, it's not 100% accurate. It's a ballpark figure. As long as you use decent margins, it will keep you in the ballpark. Pay attention to how much you put back in, and you'll know if you're losing any capacity, and also if you're putting back in approximately what it says you're taking out. So that's my use here, and in this case, so I'm going to, I'll just pop this servo connector out because I'm going to chop this in half, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to chop this in half. This will be my in end with the connector for the battery, and my out end will have the servo connector to go to the receiver. So I'm going to just snip it in half. I'll leave the signal wire, the white wire, continuous. So that way, if I put this in the middle and anything that's going over that white wire, it'll still work. That's how I would wire it up, particularly for servo. You have to do that. For battery capacity, you don't necessarily have to. In fact, you could snip it, and that way you don't have to worry about ever wiring in the wrong wired sensor and having the sensor end up wired backwards and expire on us. The other thing I'm going to show is just this little header. It plugs in like this. Seats finally. And by the way, this little header right there, that is the difference between the regular and the light format of this sensor. They do make a larger one called the FAS7, and that has a standard 3-pin servo connector there instead of this light header. This is a smaller FAS7 Lite. This is an ADV sensor as well, so it will speak both S-port and F-bus, which makes it a fair bit more flexible in a setup where you're running particularly something like a tandem TDR10. You can have a PWM port mapped to F-bus, plugs directly in there, and then this is just sitting in there. And in fact, that's what I'm going to show you as a setup. When I actually set this up, both the aircraft I'm planning on putting these sensors in right now have TDR6s, so it's going to be wired into the 6-pin telemetry header, not a PWM port. But you can wire into a PWM port if you have a receiver that allows you to map F-bus to PWM ports. So that's a TDR10, a TDR18, an Archer Plus, R10 Plus, SR10 Plus. I believe all of the R8, SR8, and GR8 in the Archer Plus line also support this. Same for the TW, but the 6 channels right now do not. There are new 6 channels coming. R6 and GR6 FB versions that allow you to map F-bus on the ports. They haven't been formally announced yet, but they have been posted about, and they're coming in the next couple of months for those really small installations where you want F-bus everywhere, particularly DLGs and exact servos. There will be an Archer Plus version of those, and there will be a twin version of those two receivers. Okay, so I'm just going to pause it right here and wire everything up, and then we'll show you how this works. Okay, we're back. So you'll see that I now have the FAS7. It's been all soldered up and I've got the heat shrink on it. And I have its, this is the telemetry header. So it's currently plugged into port 10 of this TDR10. And then I've got the other line coming into port 9. We're just going to use that for power. And finally, we have our pack, and I have everything registered and bound up on my X18 here. This is just a test model. None of this stuff has been set up for permanent use. So what we're going to do first off is we're just going to plug it in and bring it all on. And we've got our flashing blue light. Flashing blue light means everything is working in TD mode. We also have flashing green on the FAS7. So first thing we're going to go do here is we're going to go in to set receiver options, and if you remember we put it on pin 10, so instead of channel 10 we want to set that to FBus. And now I've backed all the way out to the model menu, go into telemetry and on. We're going to turn that on, and if you scroll all the way down we have VFAS and we have current. So these are our sensor, our base set of sensors here. You'll notice that it matches. It's 6.62 on the RX battery, 6.63 on VFAS. We've got a little bit of voltage drop over there, and we also have slight calculation changes. No sensor is perfectly accurate. They are how well you calibrate it, and minor component values matter. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and create a calculated sensor. It's called consumption. And it is going to, name's consumption, unit is milliamp hours, 0 to 10,000. The source is going to be current and persistent. So now we have a consumption, and we've just backed out, and we have a consumption sensor. That is essentially it. It's going to tell us what we've got and what we're using from this pack right now. You'll notice it just clicked up to 1. We are not drawing a lot. We're drawing about 100 milliamps between the TDR10 and the fast sensor, the 11 milliamps from the fast sensor itself. That's right what I'd expect it to be. If we threw a servo on here, we could rack that up a little bit quicker. Let me actually just pull a servo out, hook it up. Got a HS422. We're just going to plug that into channel 1. Do it the right way. And you'll see now we're getting 100 milliamps or so at rest. And when we start doing that, it's bumping up to 2. It's pulling somewhere between 100 and 300 milliamp hours, or milliamps, as it sits there, and it just works. Notice we got a little bit of buzz. Looks like this 422 also doesn't like 900 meg telemetry, so we'll go back, we'll set options, and wait, set options, and we'll turn on 25 milliwatt telemetry, which turns down the power of the telemetry from the 900 meg section on the R10. And you'll notice the buzzing has just mostly gone away now. Where there's a little bit now, there was a bunch more before. And we should probably just power cycle everything to make sure it all comes back up. Yeah. So there you have it. Now we can go down and we'll just go timer 3, configure widget, value, telemetry, and we're going to go pick consumption. So we're up to 7 milliamps now. Milliamp hours, I should say. For consumption is milliamp hours. Current is milliamps. So there we go. And we can pick this one and configure widget and telemetry again. And we're going to pick VFAS. So VFAS is voltage from the FAS. That's what VFAS means. You've got a FAS sensor. This is the voltage. And there we go. We're getting the slightly more accurate VFAS readout rather than just RxBat. And you'll see a drift between the two. I would generally always trust the the FAS sensor over the internal receiver, just because one is a dedicated sensor, the components are. The other one is just pulling that data off of other components. And you can see we're not getting any real drop, just a touch, a drop under load, but that's all good. And we can log this, and then you know everything that's going on. And one thing you can do is you can go in, actually we'll go up here, I'm just configure widget. Let's go look what sensors we actually get, if there's any extras. Sometimes if you look into a sensor, you'll find it's got extras. In this case, the options just show min and max. See if current has any extras. Min and max. Min and max are what's the highest you've seen, what's the lowest you've seen. I would recommend max is probably what you want. What you want in terms of current. That'll tell you where did you peak out in terms of current draw, whether or not you're coming from an ESC or a fast sensor. Usually what you're concerned about with current is how big did it get. With voltage, it's usually the opposite. You want to know how low did it get during the flight. Do you have any voltage sagging issues? Under load, are you having any problems where something's locking up, servo's hitting the wall? And again, that's where you want. Voltage, often the min value is the most interesting. Current, usually it's the max value. Long pressing both will always get you those two options minimum. Some sensors, particularly the LiPo sensors, will give you a whole bunch of other sensors that are buried in there. Things like each cell, the number of cells that it's detecting, average or minimum or lowest cell voltage, highest cell voltage. There's a lot of interesting data in those sensors. Go in and play with them. You'll be surprised what you find, particularly the LiPo sensor. And now we could actually wire in a LiPo sensor here and see what we get as well. Because we've got a balance port here. We could run the LiPo sensor plugged into that balance port and get per cell data as well. More data is fun. Sometimes you can bury yourself, so be careful about that. But again, we've been running here for a few minutes and we're up around 18 milliamp hours. So this gives you an idea of what your rest is going to be. I could plug in another 3 servos and we'd see it start increasing a little bit faster. But right now, I would say for HS422s, I think we can safely say they're going to pull about 0.6 amps at rest, and that's going to peak up from there. So there you have it, FAS7 Lite. It is a really cool little sensor. Especially if you're running any sort of classic aircraft with a receiver pack,